Hello, everyone. It's Asus McDonald here. Thanks for listening to the show. Today, I have a special guest, Ivan Misner. Ivan, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I appreciate it, Jesus.
Yes, definitely. My pleasure, too. And thank you for your time. I know you're a very, very busy man. And where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Austin, Texas. Grew up in Southern California, born in Pittsburgh, grew up in Southern California, but we moved to Austin about 5 years ago, and I love it here. This is my home office in Austin.
Love it. Love it. I'm actually born and raised in San Antonio, Texas.
Ah,
So
okay. All
I
right.
love Austin.
Well,
And that's the number one thing I miss the most is the barbecue.
yeah, that's not on my diet. I had some health issues, so unfortunately, that's no longer on my diet. But uh, Texas barbecue is very, very good. I promised my wife I'd bring her. She was born in Texas, and I promised I'd bring her home someday to Texas. And so we bought
Nice.
10 acres near Lake Austin.
Nice, nice. Oh, I definitely know where that is.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm sure the weather is blazing hot out there right now.
No, it's beautiful today.
Really?
It's wonderful today. It's like, let me look. I think it was like 70. Oh no, it's a blazing 80 degrees right now.
Blazing 80.
It's beautiful, sunny, only 80 degrees. It's great.
Nice, nice. Now, for those that don't know who Ivan Misner is, um, Dr. Ivan Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, which is the world's largest business networking organization. It was founded in 1985. The organization now has over 9,700 chapters throughout every populated continent of the world, right, Ivan?
Correct. Yeah.
And then last year alone, BNI generated almost 12.3 million referrals, resulting in $16.7 billion worth of business for its members. Dr. Misner's PhD is from the University of Southern California. He is a New York Times best-selling author who has written 25 books, including one of his latest books, Who's in Your Room? He is also a columnist of entrepreneur.com and has been a university professor as well as a member of the board of trustees for the University of Laverne. Called the father of modern networking by both Forbes and CNN, Dr. Misner is considered to be one of the world's largest, one of the world's leading, might as well say largest, experts on business networking, and has been a keynote speaker for major corporations and associations throughout the world. He has been featured in the LA Times, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times, as well as numerous TV and radio shows, including CNN, the BBC, and the Today Show on NBC. Among his many awards, he has been named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross and was recently the recipient of the John C. Maxwell Leadership Award. He is also proud to be the co-founder of the BNI Charitable Foundation. He and his wife, Elizabeth, are now empty nesters with 3 adult children. Oh, and in his spare time, he is also an amateur magician and a black belt in karate. So watch out. Welcome again to the show, Ivan. It's great to have you. I would like to just dive right in. So tell me a little bit, for those tuning into the show, about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So I started my consulting practice. I was a management consultant back in 1983. And I had gone to a lot of networking organizations, and I'd gone to some that were just incredibly mercenary. I'd go to these meetings and everyone was trying to sell to me, and I felt like I'd been slimed. Needed to go home and get a shower. Then I went to these other groups that were just incredibly social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres, and nobody was even talking business. And I didn't like either of those two. I wanted a network that had a focus on business but wasn't mercenary, and that was relational but wasn't totally social. And the glue that would hold that concept together is our principal core value of givers gain. This idea that if I help you, you help me, we all do better as a
Right.
result of it. And so I formed, I talked to some people in December of 1984 about a network like that, and they liked the idea, and I kicked off in January of 1985. And as you mentioned, we now have 9,700 groups in more than 70 countries. Now, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of a global organization, but I just wanted some referrals for my consulting practice.
That
What
is
I
too
discovered,
funny.
yeah, well, what I discovered was that business people were desperate for referrals. They were hungry for referrals. And we
Mm,
don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. It's just not taught.
right.
And so more and more people asked me to open chapters, the second, the third, the fifth, the 10th. And, we only take one person per profession. So that's why, a chapter can only have, dozens of people as a rule. And so it ended up really taking over my consulting business, which I sold in 1989 and really just did BNI full time since then.
Wow. And what helped you, to scale? Because, once you sold your business, you're doing this maybe or full time, but what helped you to scale it to be global? Or heck, maybe we just start with the state and then how do you scale that, right?
Yeah, well, I had really created a plan to scale the business early on. Uh, as a matter of fact, absolute truth, middle of 1986, I had 30 chapters after a year and a half. And somebody said to me, how many groups do you think you could eventually have? And I said, I've been looking at it, I've been crunching the numbers. I think someday BNI could have 10,000 chapters. And he laughed and he looked at me and he said, "And how many do you have?" I said, "Well, I have 30." And he said, I'll never forget. He looked at me and he said, "Well, it's very good to have goals, Ivan. Very good to have goals." And I'm like, "No, really, I think it's possible." And here we are. We're tickling almost 10,000 chapters. Now, it's taken, over 35
Wow.
years, but we're tickling
Right.
35,000 chapters. I mean, 10,000 chapters. So I think I had a plan to scale. And one of the books I read early on in the process was The E Myth by Michael Gerber. And he talks about scaling a business and learning how to work on your business, not in your
Hmm.
business. And so I used a lot of the strategies from that book, The E Myth, which stands for the entrepreneurial myth, where anyone thinks they could be an entrepreneur, but it's a lot harder than they may think. It's
Right.
easy to produce something. It's hard to manage the production of something. And so I thought that was a great book, and I did a lot of the things that he talked about in there. And I had a plan here's an example of one of the things I did. At the end of the first year, I created an organization chart with 15 different positions. Now, mind you, I only had 2 employees, and both of them were part-time. So I had
Mm,
the equivalent of 1 employee plus
wow.
me. So I created this org chart with all 15 different boxes, and I put their name in the boxes where they were doing certain things, and they were, each one was doing a couple of different roles. And I put my name in the boxes that I was doing stuff. So they were in 4 boxes, I was in 11. So at the top, it was Ivan Meisner, founder and CEO, Ivan Meisner, director of marketing, Ivan Meisner, complaint department. I swear to you, this was really on it. Ivan Meisner, janitor, because I started the business in my house.
I love it.
I started in my home, and I was the guy that took the trash out. So my goal to scale was, as I hired somebody for each one of those boxes, I would scratch their name out and my name out, and I would write their name in. And my goal was that within 5 years to be out of all the boxes but one. And I was, after about 5-6 years. Now, what I didn't realize is there were more boxes I hadn't thought of. So I did the
Sure,
exercise
sure.
again. Here's the big mistake I made. For your listeners, for your viewers, I would urge you to try this, do this, but don't do the one thing I regret. I took that document. I was so excited. I crumpled it up and threw it out,
Mm,
and then drew another one. And I hand drew it back then. You couldn't do something like on
right.
PowerPoint. They didn't have those kind of software. So if I still had that page, it would be framed and it would be sitting right in front of me to this day. So if you do that, save that, because that's part of your vision making to scale your company.
Totally, totally. And I hear that from a lot of entrepreneurs is write everything down.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's one of the things that Gerber says is write everything down, create systems.
right, right. Now, if you had to do it all over again, what would you change and why?
Yeah, and that's a great question. But I have to say, I wouldn't change anything because, and I wouldn't say that because I didn't make mistakes. I made lots of mistakes.
Hmm.
Your show's not even close to long enough for me to list all the mistakes that I made. I made tons of mistakes.
Right.
But here's why I wouldn't change anything because I made all the decisions I made with the information that I had available. And I made within my value system. I think that people regret things when they don't live their values.
Mm,
And so they have regrets when they don't live those values. So I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't change anything because the mistakes I made were my tuition
mm,
for success.
right.
As I made mistakes, I learned from those. I knew what not to do. I knew how to teach my employees what not to do because I had made those mistakes. And so I really, I believe that entrepreneurs should judge themselves by their successes, not their failures, and use those failures as tuition to become successful.
That's really good. And another thing I was going to ask was when you were writing down everyone's position, right? Wearing multiple hats and all,
Yeah.
who did you replace as a janitor?
Yeah, well, we did. I hired somebody who was they were in shipping because we finally moved out of my house to an office, and we had a shipping department. At that time, I was, doing some of the shipping, and so someone in the shipping department was also the janitor.
Nice, nice. Now, the way we do business changes every day. Some people even argue every hour, right? Especially through different generations. How do you keep BNI staying relevant?
Yeah, I think you can love what you do, but right now, if you love the way you do it,
Mm,
you're going to be irrelevant because things are changing so fast.
right.
You may love what you do, but you got to be willing to change the way you do it if you want to be successful. Now, one of BNI's core
Absolutely.
values, and BNI's core values were based on really many things that I have strong beliefs about, and this was one of them. One of our core values is traditions plus innovation,
Mm,
and I made that one core value, not two core values. I made that one core value because traditions tell us where we come from. It
right.
tells us about our tribe and who we are and what our history is. But innovation tells us where we want to go and how we want to get there. And I think that creating that as one of our core values in understanding that we need to celebrate our traditions, but at the same time, we can't be frozen by those traditions, that we
Mm,
have to be willing to adjust and change. I mean, just take a look at BNI. When
right.
COVID hit, businesses were so incredibly impacted. And think about an organization that has 9,700 in person weekly meetings at
Oh,
a restaurant.
yes.
At a restaurant. Wow. We had to pivot on a dime, and we now have 9,000. And we actually started COVID with 9,600 chapters. We now have 9,700 chapters.
Wow.
So we've actually opened chapters during COVID, but we've pivoted to online. So we have 9,700 groups that meet online right now. Until all of this craziness is over. I don't like to call it quarantine or lockdown because I think mindset's really important. So
Yes.
I call it the great pause.
Mm,
Pause button has been hit on so many businesses,
mm.
and so affected a lot of people. But members of BNI since January have generated over $10 billion in business
Wow.
in the middle of this craziness.
That's great.
Our members have done 10 billion in business. that is just amazing to me.
I love that you guys really pivoted and pretty much went on to being digital. I
Yeah.
even noticed that you guys did a website redesign, which is huge. I notice things like that because I run a website development company here in San Jose. So what I look at is the website, the experience, everything, right? So you guys are definitely on top of that in regards to technology, innovation, and having the modern and the modern design, the features, everything like that. Even doing things online,
Yeah.
which is the digital experience. Everything is it's like a virtual event.
Yeah, it is. And as a matter of fact, our convention for the first time
Yes.
is online. We're going to do an online convention, and we have more signups. And it's a small fee. It's not a lot, but it's not free. I think the early bird was like $50 was all. But we have more signups for our virtual convention than we've ever had before. And it's 2 months ahead. So, I mean, it's going to be our biggest by far. So online gives you some abilities. I mean, we have amazing speakers that'll be on our convention. Seth Godin, John Maxwell,
Oh yes.
Lisa Nichols from the movie The Secret. I mean, we just have some amazing speakers who will be talking at our convention. So we do plan on going back to in person eventually, but the genie's out of the bottle. And I wouldn't be surprised if many chapters are some kind of hybrid, some
Right.
online, some in person. But we won't do that until it's safe for people to meet again in person.
Absolutely. Now, if someone is interested to learn more about the convention, where could they go to find that information?
Yeah, go to bni.com, or you can go to my Facebook page. It's facebook.com. Ivan Meisner, no, BNI, yeah, Ivan Meisner BNI founder.
Nice. And I'll go ahead for those that are watching this or listening to this podcast episode. We're definitely going to upload this to our YouTube channel. So, Jesus McDonald, and I'm going to add those links also in the description of the video. That way, it's easy for you guys to access to learn more. And one thing, too, if you are a small business owner, an entrepreneur, BNI is where it's at. I have gone through different business networking events, groups, and you guys, Ivan, you guys really do a phenomenal job in regards to the core values,
Thank you.
accountability, everything. I've seen a lot of business networking groups that are very casual.
Yeah.
There is no accountability, and people just drop like flies.
They do.
So,
They like the idea at first because they think there's no requirements. But the truth is, you got to have processes and rules if you want to be successful. I like to say, hockey without rules would be boxing on ice. You
yes.
know, you got to have rules, otherwise things just go to heck in a handbasket. So we do have some accountability, and we also have a great culture. You know, our principal core value of givers gain is critical, I think, in order to be successful in any endeavor. And
Hmm.
it's an important one for us. It's our principal core value. And givers gain is more than a phrase. I believe it's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's
Yes.
applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world. And I absolutely love our core value of givers gain.
No, I do too, because in short, the way I translate it and what it means to me is you have to take an interest in others more than yourself,
Yeah.
which means you have to get to know the person in the room. What do they like? What's their ideal client? What kind of industry partners do they have, right? You have to really get to know them and also understand that even thinking about them on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
that was a big thing that I really like about that saying. Now, do you have any, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that tune into the show. Do you have any tips for entrepreneurs to manage their business?
Yeah. So let me give you three that I did not learn in school that
Okay,
I think are
go.
really important. And the first is just slightly complex. Here it is. And I wrote about this in a book I wrote called Masters of Success. Success is the uncommon application of common knowledge.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, here's how I came up to that conclusion. At the time, I was teaching as an adjunct professor in business at a university, and I asked, first I asked BNI members, what do you think it takes to be successful? And BNI members said, oh, passion, commitment, systems, processes, dealing with adversity, those kinds of things. I said, great. Then I asked some of the really big names that were in my book, like Aaron Brockovich and Michael Gerber and Jack Canfield, and some really well-known people.
Right.
What they thought it took to be successful, and they said, passion, systems, goals, vision, dealing with adversity, same thing. Then I asked my college students, and Jesus, you know what they said?
What do they say?
Passion, system, vision, goals. The same list. They did add one thing that the successful people and BNI members didn't add. They said luck. And I had to teach them that I really believe the harder you work, the luckier you get. But other than that, they had the same list. So I came to the conclusion that if we all basically know what it takes to be successful, then why is it that we're not? Some of us are not.
Right.
And the conclusion I came to was that success is the uncommon application of common knowledge. Because I did not invent networking. It wasn't my idea.
Right.
It's been around for more than a century, as a formal thing. And but I created a system and a process, and I scaled it. And so I applied uncommon concepts to a common idea. And I think that's the first thing. The second thing is probably the biggest thing that I could recommend to entrepreneurs. It's the biggest mistake that I see. You want to be successful in business, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
Right.
And what I see too many businesses doing is 1,000 things 6 times. They keep jumping around at every bright, shiny object they see. And they only do it a handful of times and it doesn't work. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 6. It could be 5. It could be 7. But it's a handful of things that you just do over and over and over again. If I have any superpower at all as a business person, it's that I am a dog with a bone. I am, I may not be the smartest guy in a room. I may not be the most successful guy in a room, but I am almost always the most persistent guy in a room. And I think that really makes a difference in success. Here's the third one. As much as possible, and as soon as you can in business, always try to work in your flame and not in your wax. When you're in your flame, you're on fire, you're excited, you love what you're doing, you're passionate about it. People can hear it in your voice, they can see it in the way you behave. When you're working in your wax, it takes all your energy away. And people can see that in your behavior and they can hear it in your voice. So work in your flame. Now, look, I get it. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to do what you want to do. But the sooner you can shift to be working more in your flame, the better. When I did that 15-person box, do you think I liked being the janitor? No. Do you think I liked, handling complaints? No.
Right.
The thing I really hated, though, the first box I filled was not those. It was accounting. It was the bookkeeper. I hired a bookkeeper. It was not my flame.
Right.
A true story. No, it's a quick one. I hired this bookkeeper. She was with me for a couple of months. She came to me and she said, Ivan, we were 5 cents off, 5 pennies off on balancing the books. But it took me 2 hours, but I found it. And I said to her, I am so proud of you. That's really good. Well done. And I said that to a friend of mine, and he said, did you reprimand her? I said, why would I reprimand her? Because she spent 2 hours, to
Right.
find 5 cents. I said, are you kidding? No way did I reprimand her. Think about it. What if it were $500? She wouldn't go home at night. If it were $50, she'd, stay late to try and find it. For me, if it were $50, I'd go, close enough.
Yeah.
It's close enough because that's not my flame. That was her flame. And so I hired somebody that my wax was their flame. And as soon as you can do that, then then you're going to be able to scale. By the way, interviews like this is my flame. This is what I love to do.
I love doing this too. And when I saw you on LinkedIn posting, I'm like, I gotta ask him if he's open to join the show. So I'm very excited about this too.
Thank you.
Now, last question. Speaking of LinkedIn, right? And you mentioned Facebook a little bit.
Yeah.
What is your favorite social media platform?
So, I'm on a lot of different platforms because I've discovered that it's important to be where my audience is, not where I like to be. So I'm on a lot of different, I'll give you a straight answer to that, but I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. I am obviously on LinkedIn. I didn't know, did you know LinkedIn has a limit for the number of people?
No, like in connections that you can
Yes.
build to?
Yes.
I did not know that.
I hit it.
Wow.
So I had to create a public page, which doesn't have that. It's 30,000.
But I think you can switch it to connect to follow, right? So people can start following.
Yeah, they can follow. Yeah, but I hit my
Okay.
limit for connecting.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but where I have most of my followers is on Facebook. I have about 160,000 followers on Facebook. The public page, obviously.
Yeah, you didn't have to create a separate page for that one, right?
No, I did already. I hit that $5,000 limit.
So when you create separate, yeah, when you create separate pages, do you post on all of them?
Well, I post different things. So, are you talking about the Facebook or all the different platforms?
Well, Facebook and LinkedIn, because you have multiple pages for those.
Yeah.
Right?
So with Facebook, I have a private page, which I mostly put up private stuff, some public, because it's a very limited group of people. And a number of my close friends are on there. On my public page, I put a lot more up on my public page than I do on my private page.
Awesome.
Yeah, and same. Well, not quite the same for LinkedIn, but similar for LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really good. Yeah, I'm big on LinkedIn. Facebook would come second, but that is totally good. I love it. Now, we are out of time, Ivan.
Where'd the time go?
Yeah, it went by so fast. So we're definitely out of time. Thank you again for joining the show, and stay safe, stay healthy. And any last remarks?
Yeah, the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly.
I don't believe it's either of those. I believe it's how well you know each other that really counts. It's not just whether you have a contact. The question is, can you pick up the phone, call that person? Would they take your call? And if you ask for a favor, would they be willing to do it? It's not what you know or who you know. It's how well you know each other that really, really makes a difference. If your followers are at all interested, they can connect with me on social media or on my blog, ivanmisner.com, and of course, bni.com. Thanks, Jesus.
Thank you, Ivan. You're awesome, and you make it a great day.
Thank you.